Listeners and viewers, please welcome the host of my guest at this time, Jose Gonzalez.
Hey everybody, welcome back to my guest at this time, Jose Gonzalez here. It is great to be with you all on an exciting day we're recording this. It's the day of AEW Double or Nothing, but I'm so thrilled to be joined by today's guest. They are the creator of Pario Magazine, someone who's been covering wrestling and entertainment in the Australian scene for quite some time. Jamie Apps. Jamie, how are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, I appreciate your time. I know things have been quite hectic just with wrestling in general, so I can only imagine squeezing this in before the buy-in is only going to help things a little bit further for you today.
Yeah, busy day. Although thankfully for me, AEW pay-per-views aren't too bad. They're 10 a.m. starts, not 8 p.m. starts. So the 4-hour show is fine for me. Yeah,
I'll probably be up at least till 1 a.m. knowing how AEW runs these 12, 13 match cards, but who's counting, really?
Yep.
But yeah, so for those that don't know, I mean, with you doing Pario Magazine, it's a publication not only digitally, but for print. So it covers wrestling, gaming, television, music, the whole gambit. So a lot of that really lends itself to traditional multimedia journalism. Was that something you had a background in university at all?
So bit of a weird story. I started at university doing a Bachelor of Economics. Enjoyed that, but there was one class in that particular, the history of economics, which was all about writing essays about the history of economics. So I was like, I actually like writing. So then I went on to do a master's of journalism and communications, and then that led me down the whole path into the world of newspapers.
Very, very nice. I feel like a lot of people that end up with a journalism degree don't always go into it going for it. I know at one point for me, I was going to be a music education major. Then somehow things led astray and I ended up graduating with a journalism degree. So always something interesting that kind of finds you and will run so much of what you do in the future. So were you always interested in professional wrestling, or like, can you recall like what really first piqued your interest?
So I was flicking through the channels one day and Sting popped up on my screen. And from there it was off to the races. So I was watching WCW every week on pay television, like subscription television here. And then we got the WWE would come on. It was initially like an 8:30 p.m. show. And then we eventually started getting it in the afternoons after school. So I would come home from school and watch Raw and SmackDown. And then, and then it ultimately went to becoming a live show. So it was a 10 a.m. show for us. And yeah, watched all of that. We were getting the TNA weekly pay-per-views there for a while, just on our subscription television service. So I was watching those and just been watching everything ever since.
Oh, wow. So, I mean, when you were watching Sting, did you eventually see when he would make the transition over to TNA from that absence after WCW?
Yes. Yeah. So I watched all of basically Sting's run in TNA and then ultimately him leaving there and going to WWE for a little while and then watching him in AEW. And I realized on his retirement weekend, I was looking back through some photos and I actually got to see Sting at a Impact taping when I went to Orlando for the very first time. And yeah, looking back on those photos was pretty fun.
Oh, wow. So, I mean, Sting definitely having a lasting impression. What did you think of how they did his retirement match with the tag team championship?
I thought it was fantastic. Like, I don't think he could have gone out on a better note for someone to have had such a long career, and to let him go out as the champion, I thought was really fitting.
Yeah, I feel like you don't see that too often. A lot of times when wrestlers are promoting a retirement match, it always feels like they're going to put over whoever it is, but it's nice that you really got to have that showcase there. So, I mean, aside from the Stinger, were there anyone else that really you would consider a favorite of yours?
So Punk was up there for a long time until sort of recent times. Yeah, he was definitely a big one. I was an early Cena fan, and then went away from that. And Randy Orton was a massive one as well when he came in with Evolution. I was on board with Randy the whole time.
Well, I mean, you're talking about stalwarts of the whole business too. We'll circle back to John Cena. Don't worry about that. But I mean, even beyond the wrestling side of things, obviously Perio also focusing on gaming and TV. So, do you have like early gaming or television memories of like things that really made you invested into those?
Gaming is, I grew up with an NES, like the original grey box,
Nice.
playing Super Mario Brothers. That was my first foray into gaming, and then since then we had NES, Super Nintendo, then jumped to PlayStation. I've had every PlayStation console. Went to Xbox there for the 360 era, just because my roommates were big Xbox people, so we were on that train, and ultimately came back to PS4 and PS5.
Nice. I know for me, like I was a little bit younger, getting like PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2. I think funny enough, the first game I really remember playing, I think was Tekken 2, which funny
Mhm.
enough, I think Dakota Kai said the same thing one time. So that's like a cool little Easter egg thing there. But yeah, definitely grew up more on the PlayStation side of things. We go back to older Nintendos. I have a Sega Genesis still. Obviously, PC gaming has taken up a lot of my stuff. So, do you have a current series or maybe a franchise of yours that you would consider like a comfort game?
Ooh, a comfort game. I love like the racing games. Like I can chuck on like a Formula One racing game, or
All right.
not so much Gran Turismo, but yeah, Formula One I can just play anytime. Um, and weirdly, like I will happily play The Last of Us over and over and over again. Like I just love that franchise so much.
I mean, the story behind it too. I mean, I've gotten to see, I mean, Let's Plays of Last of Us, like even back to the PS3 days, and even the adaptation that we've gotten to see into the TV series. How did you think they did a good job of transforming that from our digital world into a real world?
I thought it was a phenomenal adaptation. Looking back on it now with the Fallout show as well, I think the Fallout show was probably a better adaptation just because it was a much more difficult adaptation. They had to create their own story, whereas The Last of Us, it was already such a cinematic experience. They literally just had to put live actors in there and follow the story that they already had. So I thought it was great, but looking back on it, I'm like, it was a pretty easy task.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting because we've seen on the film side of things how many times that franchises that do well as a game just struggle to translate into something like that. Do you feel like TV's been the better medium for bringing those games to life?
Generally, yes, I think because you have a bit more time to flesh out those characters. The Uncharted movie was fine for what it was, but yeah, you don't really get to know those characters as well as if we had a TV series. We could have really got to know Sully and all of the side characters a bit more.
Yeah, and then I immediately I think of when we say bad video game movies, I think of like the Street Fighter movie or the first Super Mario movie, the live action
Mhm.
one. It's
Yep.
just well, it was a choice, but I mean, you kind of see like how things progress, and now the animated one did super well. We're seeing another Mortal Kombat sequel, which is kind of like gone a little bit more into like the gore and like the ultra violence that we know from the games rather than what we saw in the 90s. So that's always interesting to see. I mean, all this to say that Perio's been around for a few years. What led to you wanting to start this kind of digital publication that fits so much?
So I was working in newspapers as an arts and entertainment editor. Obviously, when you're working in a newspaper like that, you really do have to be quite focused. And I was focused on the Sydney entertainment scene, so there was only so many things that we could cover, and it had to be very specific to that audience. So I was always like, I feel like I have more to offer. I want to do a lot more sort of wrestling stuff and weird things that aren't necessarily like going to cater to that audience. So I can chat to people like Ella J, Kate from Fightful, like those people. I would never have that opportunity if I just stayed in the newspaper realm. So I was like, let's branch out, do my own thing. Ran it simultaneously with the newspapers for about a year and a half, 2 years, and eventually got it to the point where I was like, I can jump now. Let's go for it. Go all in on the magazine and the podcast and other random ventures, and we've done that, and it's gone really well.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I mean, I've gotten to see that really reached all sorts of areas of the world. I mean, you've had people not only local to Australia, you've had people from the UK, the US, really a global platform that it's so awesome to see. I know for a lot of us in the West, we don't get to see too much of Australia when it comes to the wrestling side of things, aside from like the
Mhm.
stars that have transplanted into like our companies and TV over here. What do you think is something that a lot of people might be missing out on if they're not really tapped into the Aussie scene?
Uh, the level of the talent, I think we have some of the best talent in the world. They're just in a horrible time zone, so it's very difficult for people to catch the shows. Um, and the diversity of our scene as well, like because our cities are so far apart, like from Sydney to Melbourne, you're looking at an 8, 10 hour, 10.5 hour drive.
Oh,
So
wow.
they are very sort of different. And like I think you'll have PWA in Sydney is very sort of Japan influenced with a bit of lucha mixed in. Then you go down to Melbourne with MCW, and they're very sort of sports entertainment. So like every sort of city has their own vibe and style. So no matter what, if you get into the Australian scene, you will find at least one company that you enjoy, and there will be fantastic talent in all of them.
That's awesome because I always feel like it kind of lends itself to back in the day in the US, how they had the territory system where like
Mhm.
you would be up north and that's a different style from the south to the Midwest, the Mid Atlantic, all these different areas. We've also gotten to see a few more tastes of what Aussies can bring to wrestling. Obviously, with WWE holding Elimination Chamber in Perth, we got to see how lively that crowd was. And on the
Oh yeah.
talent side of things, I know Mickey James was with Starcast and Ballarat holding her, which was that all women's show. So, what do you think would be a good way that we can continue getting more of these global showcases for the Aussie scene?
I think OPW are doing a phenomenal job of that with the bigger shows and bringing in people like Mickey James and Bret Hart to sort of be the face of the show to sort of make people go, "Oh, wait, this is an important show that we need to check out." And then they did a great job of mixing the local talent in with the international. It wasn't just a lot of like a few of the international touring companies that we've seen come in. Um, it's a lot of like, oh, there's 8 matches on this card, and 2 of them feature Australians against each other, not necessarily showcased alongside or against the internationals to be like, oh, look, they're on the same level.
Yeah, I mean, you say against internationals on the same level. One that immediately stuck out to me is someone who's making some words pop up in the scene is Delta after
Mhm.
that tremendous match she had with Jordan Grace for the TNA Knockouts World Title. Seems like she could be making her way stateside. So, are there any other talents you think of that could probably lend themselves to the bigger mainstream scene that we have internationally?
Uh, so first and foremost, there's Robbie Eagles, obviously doing phenomenal in Best of the Super Juniors at the moment. Um, the Velocities are a tag team, a junior heavyweight tag team that I highly praise all the time. I think they're one of the best tag teams in the world. If you go back and watch, they had a match against Aussie Open for the PWA tag titles early in the pandemic, so like 2020. It's one of the best matches of that year. Lena Cross is another phenomenal talent. She's currently touring the States, does a lot of tours in Sendai as well. Um, Slex, I believe, is heading to the States soon. He's from Melbourne. He's absolutely jacked. Uh, has a really like sort of ROH wrestling style. He's very good. And Brooksy is another one as well. Adam Brooks. He's a character work at the moment as sort of this really cocky, arrogant heel is great. He's and gets in the ring and has great matches. So some of his matches with Will Ospreay, again, some of the best matches of the year, and they had those.
Gosh, I mean, even speaking of Will Ospreay, that's someone you've gotten to speak to on like stars that have been on TV as of late. You've had Will Ospreay on with Pario. You've had Steph Delander for your commentary booth podcast. So, how did those come about?
So Ospreay, I had Robbie on the podcast once, and then we went back to the New Japan. Reached out to the New Japan contact that we had, and they set me up. I was like, I'm looking to interview anybody that you can offer me, and they were like, oh, how about Will Ospreay? And I went, Okay, yeah, sure. I will take probably one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. And then Steph, I'm close friends with Steph. I've known her since before she took off the mask when she was back as Facebook. So just reached out to her when I was looking for a guest, and she was like, "Yeah, sweet, we'll jump on."
Yeah, I love that. I mean, New Japan just casually saying, "Oh yeah, here's a world champion, have fun," and
Yeah,
then seeing
I
like
couldn't believe that.
God, and you think of like how crazy Osprey has been over the years, regardless whether it was in the UK, New Japan, what he's doing now with AEW. Steph has really showed like what it can take to be a true independent wrestler in every sense of the world. She's popping up everywhere. She's doing every show. She's really made such a mark for herself, showing that there's so much more beyond maybe a release or maybe just not being in where you should be at the right time. So she's really someone that's shown that you can land on your feet and do so well. And then kind of on that note, you've also kind of going back through some past interviews, might have had a chance to talk to a 16-time world champion in John Cena ahead of one of his speaking engagements in Australia. So was that kind of just one of those opportunities for him appearing locally, or was that through WWE? I'm very curious.
So that was when I was in my role at the newspaper. The PR people hit us up. Hey, we've got John Cena coming out for this speaking tour. Is there anybody there that wants to chat to him? And I was like, yes, I will take that. I'm not handing that off to anybody else. So I did that, and then I was allowed to like keep the recordings and upload them to my own channels and stuff. So that was a very surreal moment as well. Just having a phone call with John Cena on a random, I think it was like a Thursday morning.
Yeah, I mean, that is just like one of those things where it's always nice to have the archive of like, oh yeah, I did kind of do that. What is my life sometimes?
Mhm.
One that wasn't so much remote, but I mean, one that I was like, there's no freaking way. It was Kurt Russell and Samuel L. Jackson of all
Oh,
things. Like you think about like film and like someone who's just a marquee name. I don't think you could have a bigger name than Samuel L. Jackson. So how was that experience for you?
that one was very nerve wracking. I think that was like my first major sort of in-person interview where I didn't sort of have a previous connection with the people. Like I've interviewed Robbie a few times, and we get along really well. So like interviewing him the first time on camera was fine, but traveling up to Sydney for that interview with Samuel and Kurt Russell, sitting on the train, and I was fine until about 5 minutes before I had to get off the train, and then I was like, okay, now I'm very nervous. Walked into the venue where the interview was taking place, sat in the waiting room, immediately started like getting the nervous terror sweats, and somehow managed to, I think, play it off quite calm in the interview.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't tell if you were nervous. I think you carried yourself very well. I think it's just showing that even when you might have such an not only a novel opportunity, but one that's like kind of beyond what you can put into words, it shows that you can handle not only the pressure, but do well with whatever task is thrown your way, which is very commendable. So, I mean, are there any bucket list guests that you might would have not have gotten the chance to interview quite yet, but you're looking forward to, or maybe you want to shoot your shot and speak it into existence?
I would. It's probably a very long shot, but before he hangs up the boots as a full-time wrestler, Brian Danielson is someone that I would just love the opportunity to chat to him. He's been someone that since I discovered him when I was sort of falling off WWE there for a little while, and I discovered sort of Ring of Honor and him on the Indies, thanks to Cabana's Wrestling Road Diaries documentary. And I sort of found him and immediately was like, oh, this guy's fantastic. So I'd love to chat to him before he hangs up the boots. And then on the Australian scene, Madison Eagles is someone that has always been on my list of I need to talk to her about the influence she has had on the Australian wrestling scene and all of the ladies in particular that have come from her teachings. Like pretty much anybody on the international scene at the moment that is from Australia, they were under Madison Eagles getting taught by her at some point.
God, even beyond just the Australian exports from Madison Eagles, seeing her stuff in Shimmer, she is someone that I feel like never got her just due, which is insane to me considering the level of talent that she always had, regardless of who she was facing. If she ever wanted to come out of retirement, I don't think anybody would say no. I feel like that's one of those dream matches that I'm surprised we still haven't gotten to see with some of the Western talent, but also Danielson easily, probably I would say a greatest of all time contender, just with
Mhm.
how diverse his work has been across all the different companies, Japan, ROH, WWE, AEW. So you never know. Things life is crazy. You could always get those opportunities.
Yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
hoping AEW do an Australian tour at some point, and then I can contact their PR
yeah, I'm
people and like, hey,
surprised they haven't
let's do
yet,
something.
especially with them doing the UK. I feel like it's only right that they can expand even further into other parts of the world. Australia, I mean, definitely we've seen how well it translates for those Western companies. I mean, TNA's gone over there, WWE's gone over there, so I feel like it's only a matter of time before AEW can get their feet wet over in Australia as well.
And
So,
AEW is broadcast on ESPN here, so they
ooh.
are in a crazy amount of TVs. You can go into a random pub on a random Thursday, and Dynamite will just be on TV.
I'm not mad at that at all. I feel like we are so jaded in the States with like how TV works with wrestling that like you also don't realize like, oh no, it's actually promoted as such and on a platform to be showcased in that way. It really is a spectacle because it's always just kind of mixed in with casual entertainment where you're gonna get syndicated shows, maybe an occasional reality show, but we don't really get to see them on those sports networks like so much of the world does. So that's awesome to kind of see the way that it's treated over there. I mean,
And
aside Oh, go
I've
ahead.
had so many people that like fell out of wrestling years ago message me since AEW came up and like, Sting's wrestling? This person's still wrestling? I'm like, yes, there's this whole new company and they're doing fantastic stuff. Check it out. And they immediately fall back in love with wrestling.
Yeah, it's also proof that there's more to just one company when it comes to getting back into wrestling too. Everybody has a style or an approach that even if you might not have one that's your cup of tea right now, if you go looking for it, you will find something to latch onto. I guarantee it. So, I mean, aside from Pario Magazine, something else that you're working on is the Australian Wrestling Cards Company. So, were you a collector of trading cards in the past?
Pokemon. Growing up, I collected a bunch of Pokemon cards. I think I still have them in boxes somewhere.
Oh, wow.
Um, so yeah, Pokemon cards. But the thing that really kicked it off was I went to the Battle of Los Angeles the year that Robbie Eagles, Jonah, and Adam Brooks were in the tournament. So there was 3 Australians in the tournament. I
Oh,
went,
wow.
okay, I'm going to fly to LA for 4 days just to go to this show. And I was in and out, flew in on Thursday, flew out on Monday, which is pretty ridiculous, 15-hour flight each way. Flew over for that. And there was a person making like a fan collection of trading cards for that event. So I picked those up. And then when AEW launched, they were promoting, watching the shows, they were promoting, oh, we've got our trading card line coming out. And that made me think, wait, nobody has done anything like this here in Australia. I know Mick Moretti did a small run of cards just for his own like individual merch, but when you're printing them like that, it is very expensive. So I looked at it on a more broad Australian scene as a whole and looked to try and do it at a relatively affordable rate and share the wealth between myself, the wrestlers, and all of the photographers that contribute photos. Everybody gets a payment out of being involved. So it's a nice way to introduce fans to people that they might not know. Like if they're not from Sydney, they might not know a lot of these Sydney talents. If they're from Sydney, they might not know the people down in South Australia or Perth or even up in Queensland who are doing great stuff up there. So it's a great way to get people to look at new stars and find new shows to watch.
I like that. And it also shows there's more to memorabilia other than maybe a t-shirt or even like a replica belt or something. It's just something different, tangible, and also can introduce you to so many more talent as well, too. So on that topic of the trading cards and for Perio, what are ways that people can either subscribe or hopefully get a physical copy of one of the two?
The easiest place to head to is pariomagazine.com.au. The links to the Patreon to subscribe are on there. You can buy the cards and the magazines directly from the website. So that's probably the easiest way to do it. just head to that one place. Everything's all there.
Very, very nice. And then before we wrap up, do you have any other goals you're looking forward to for 2024 so far?
Just continue to build on the cards, build the magazine out. The last 2 months with the magazine have given me sort of the highest numbers that we've done in a very long time, like since we started. So like we're just continuing to grow month on month, which is great. YouTube is finally taking off. It's been very slow going to get that subscriber base up, but it's finally sort of on that upslope. So now I'm hoping we've hit that peak where it's going to just take off at some point, which is very nice.
That's awesome. And I mean, I really do appreciate your time with all of this, Jamie. For those that are interested, where can they find you even beyond Pario?
So my personal social medias are all at Jamie Apps Media. That's across all platforms. And then, yeah, the other one is at Pario Magazine and at Ausres Cards, AUSWRESCARDS.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I really do appreciate your time, Jamie. Everybody be on the lookout for whatever Perio has going on, whether it's going to be when they have next prints coming out, other interviews that they have, other exclusive content. Really a fun showcase for almost anything that you could think of entertainment wise. You will find something there. It's been fun kind of going on that deep dive. And for those that are interested in finding whatever it is that I'm doing, joseontheair.com has your links to everything, social media, to our live streams on Twitch, YouTube, my merch shop as well. And I will make sure that I will see you very soon. I guess at this time. Take care, everybody.